I'm Gerald Bentley. This is LVWS Confidential. Today, we are in the presence of greatness, the greatness himself, Brandon G. Going to take a look inside the book and find out what's coming up in the Las Vegas wrestling scene. Hey, Brandon, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you, Gerald. I'm glad to be here. First time ever.
Yeah, and hey, I wanted to ask you because there's a few wrestlers out there with books writing their story on a national level. You see Powerhouse Hobbs with the Book of Hobbs. You had the book first. So,
It's
what's the
true.
key to the Book of Greatness?
You see, the key to the Book of Greatness is Brandon G has studied the greats, not just of pro wrestling, but of all time. I'm talking Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Einstein, all of the greats. And then we put it into this big playbook that I can use. And then I use my
Okay.
greatness in the combination, just like that.
In a Machiavellian way of sorts,
Yes, very much so.
because everything can intersect with professional wrestling. So, yeah, that makes sense. Now, I did see that some of the officials have had problems with you bringing a book into the ring. I mean, it's not a steel chair. You're not bringing in barbed wire baseball bats. It's a book. Why are they messing with it
You
and
know
grabbing your
something?
book during the match?
If you followed me earlier this year, Gerald, I actually had to wrestle one of the former referees in Mr. AJ Avon. But, I really don't know. Maybe it's the knowledge in the book. Maybe it's because I have a rule book for the referees. Like example, greatness has to the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Maybe they don't like it. I don't know. They should read it though.
So now that you've handled and you've dispatched that referee, what are the big challenges that you're going to have to look forward to make your mark of greatness here in 2023?
It's just hitting the road. Honestly, last Saturday we traveled to the Nile Theater in Arizona, which has been a very bucket list thing for me. But recently, like the past year, I've been broadening my horizons, going down to SoCal, down in Mexicali where Brawley is, Arizona. I really want to try to get to Utah at some
Uh huh.
point, but I think the goal for me is to, get seen. I think Hood Slam's a very good start for me, but to get seen on more eyes in that, like a West Coast Pro or a Prestige, like getting eyes on me from them.
Well, that is important, right? Because you're seeing a resurgence of pro wrestling nationally, especially in the Las Vegas area. Multiple promotions running, lots of shows going on, but all around the West Coast, there's a lot of independent wrestling, and you're starting to see more crossover too. If people search on
I like to
YouTube,
call
you
it.
can
Sorry.
see that match with you and Nick Zander from the Hood Slam.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
Go
cut you
ahead.
off. I like to refer as the 20s that we're in now as the wrestling renaissance roaring 20s because it
Yeah.
really started feeling like that, especially with just the waves that's just been coming the past few years.
Yeah, no, I'd agree because you're getting back to it's a weird combination. You're getting back to having vibrant territories all around the country,
Yes.
but above that is I don't know what you want to say, a mesh of national touring promotions all on TV. And if you want to dive
Correct.
deep down the rabbit hole, you could legitimately watch high end professional wrestling every night of the week, new programming, 3 hours a night, every single night. And it's all doing well. So it's a tremendous time to be
And you couldn't
involved.
say that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't say that 10 years ago, couldn't say it 15. Now, as a wrestling fan, every single night you have something new and exciting to watch.
Yeah. And digging in a little bit to yourself and your backstory, I know you're involved in Future Stars of Wrestling and their kids program, which is really one of the more unique programs in the country. I know they have them in Japan, they have them in Australia, but there's not a lot of kids classes for pro wrestling in America. What's your involvement in that with FSW?
Great question, Gerald. I have been the assistant coach of the kids class for about 3 years now.
Okay.
The main coach is Leon Hader. But seeing these kids and where they've come from, Bodie Young Prodigy,
Hmm.
Davion Jaco, just to name a few, they've really grown the last few years. And also the cool part is not only do we get to teach them, the fundamentals and the safety, you get to see, for me anyways, I get to remember why I started wrestling. Because you see that joy and the true passion that these kids have. And it's great.
Yeah, and you're seeing them break into nationally prominent roles. I mean, Bodie is right up there in major regional promotions, going up against, wrestlers that you'd recognize if you're just a casual fan. You see him on TV. Davion's been in the ring with a lot of big time performers. Wrestler who was just in and helped out with the second gen pro show during the AEW pay per view weekend. Billy Starks just turned 18 and she just signed with AEW. And then this week, Nick Wayne, another 18-year-old who's made the rounds through Las Vegas, he's going to have his debut match. So you're seeing that pipeline. Has that caused more of a, I don't know, more of a boom or more of an interest in the kids program? Are you seeing more of a growth there?
I think so, because even when I was, a young kid, I didn't know there was a kids class or even that was available. So having that open to them and giving them an avenue to jumpstart their career in the right way is definitely led to more young prodigies.
Yeah.
Like you said, like I would have done the same thing if I was in their shoes. But I think training them with the right fundamentals is very important. And I think as a whole in the business, we've done that, because I know, that conception of, what if they get hurt, because bumps, they hurt whether you're 14 or 40, they will.
Sure.
But if you do it a clean black bump, you minimize that risk, and that's all you can do.
Well, and I think really with the way kids sports are being ran now, you can't avoid the risk of injury and the risk of wear. Take a look at how some kids play baseball 10 months a year, basketball 10 months a year, soccer. There's injuries in everything and everything's being pushed to the wall.
Yep.
I mean, in all honesty, a couple of days or 3 days a week of wrestling training and a couple of matches a week, it's really probably less demanding on the body than
To
some of
be
these
honest,
touring sports programs are.
I believe that too, because I think back to high school, man. Like, you were practicing almost every day, several hours a day after school. I mean, we still, we train, but it's not, I say, less risk of injury in a wrestling ring than that kind of training.
Sure.
Because I think in the ring, it's, we push ourselves, but we're not gonna overly push ourselves to where we get hurt.
Yeah, there's a method in there designed to, okay, hey, let's pull it back a little bit. And I'm sure even more so with kids. I mean, they're not doing a move until you're extremely confident that they can pull it off and not have a problem.
Correct.
I'm sure you're not having the 12-year-olds going in there and doing sheer drop brain busters in week one.
No, but they can do a pretty good headlock takeover, I must say.
Sure. So what would be the first couple of weeks of a class if somebody's watching this and they watch maybe they watch the FSW network, they watch WWE Impact AEW, and their kids are saying, "Hey, I want to do this. I want to try. What would your initial session be, and maybe what would you say to the parents when they come in?
So normally we run kids class from 12 to 3 on Saturdays at the
Okay,
arena. A little plug there. But every week it's kind of like actual training in the sense that we always start with the basic rolls. You know, your front rolls, back rolls, left, right, um, your up and overs, running the ropes, learning how to lock up, basic holds like a chin lock or a headlock,
hmm
even a waist. Um, and then we like to do drills. That's the thing with kids is that differentiates it from adults is you have to organize drills so it flows
sure.
because kids have different attention spans per se. So it has to be more of uh, like a bing bang boom.
Yeah.
But that's the only difference. It's still a lot of the same good fundamentals. Like we teach them drop toe holds, schoolboys, no Canadian destroyers or nothing like that. But and then we usually show them how to do kicks and strikes and running them down the not formula, but a how a match is ran.
Okay. Yeah, like a
The
basic
psychology.
outline.
Yeah. And
And
then, sorry, go ahead.
and I was going to say, and really, you probably get more interest with the kids than somebody beginning to go and work in amateur wrestling. And I did amateur wrestling in high school and sparred with the team in college. But when you first get into amateur wrestling, I think I wasn't alone. Oh man, I can't do this move. I can't do that move. I can't do this. It's not as fun initially because you are really limited to the moves you can do. It's not much like pro wrestling at all. I'd imagine the kids are a lot more excited to be able to see that, okay, hey, pretty soon I can do that move that I want to do.
Yes, I agree. Like most of the time, it's little things like, hey, can I do a cross bot? Like we'll bring in the little crash mat, at
Uh-huh.
the end of class. Hey, who wants to jump off the middle? Who wants to jump off the top? Safely.
Sure.
And then like cross bodies or stuff like that. So the excitement too, like anytime after a pay-per-view or a premium live event, I'll come to class the next week and then I'll just mention it and everyone's just wanting to talk about it, which is great.
Sure.
Because I tell them all the time, like now that you're training to be a wrestler, and from what the coaches tell you, you can actually watch and study and then pick up what you want to learn/try.
Yeah, and you can borrow and incorporate moves that you see other wrestlers using. So, with your own personal style, who are some of the main wrestlers that influenced you?
I gotta say, I was a big Rock fan growing up. It's
Yeah.
just his promos and his cadence. And then I'm a big fan of Jericho, Punk, and Bryan. Mainly because when I was as a teenager, whenever I'd watch them, you knew they were gonna have a good match
hmm
because that's just the workers they are. And looking back on it, that's what I always try to model myself after. Is you always want to have a good match with everyone.
That's a good goal. Now, who are some of the opponents that you feel that you've connected with the most? Yeah, it had a good match with the Heartbeat Nick Xander just last week, and
Nick
like I said, if
Xander
you
is
just search on YouTube, it's right there, it popped right up.
Nick Xander is one of them. We have great chemistry, but I will say, Chase Bell, this
Okay,
guy, he moved from Louisiana, I believe, and when he came into town, I just made him feel welcome. I'm like, who's this out of towner? And then he's Chase Bell in real life is a very very cool guy, very uh, honest, and a sweetheart of a dude. But me and him, we have beat each other up so many times in training and matches. Like we've even tagged together. So he's probably one of my favorite opponents, as far as chemistry and calling and creating a good match.
Which is part of it, right? Because the more that you're connected, the better the match is going to be. The
Yes.
more you challenge each other.
And the more comfortable you are with each other too. The willingness to want to do a more risk taking move or a sequence is there because you can trust them more.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, and that's what helps push you to that next level. What separates what people are expecting to see, because I think there's still a stigma of, and sometimes you'll hear it on the National Wrestling Talk or on YouTube channels. Oh, well, that was indie-rific. Well,
Uh,
you know what?
what does that
There's
even mean,
nothing.
Gerald?
Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that because you see some great wrestling on the indie scenes, and generally speaking, the wrestlers that are making the impact on the national scenes, they were the stars of the indie scenes a few years ago. So
Yes,
really, you're seeing the core of what you see on TV, to the point I would actually contend that you could see some better matches on the indie level because the reality of time constraints isn't there as much. You can go a little bit more. You can tell more of a physical story.
very true. Like obviously, like growing up, Monday or Raw was only 2 hours, and
Yeah.
so which really is an hour and a half, and so the matches were never more than 5 minutes unless you're a main event maybe.
Hmm.
And so getting that, having 8 minutes or 10 minutes or 12 minutes, just the ability to tell whatever kind of story you want and to be really interactive with the crowd too. I feel like when you have, a certain time and you're on TV, you have to not neglect, but the audience doesn't get as much of a focus as they would if it wasn't live.
I'd agree with that. Sure. Well, and then I think one thing too is that at its core, you see the evolution in wrestling start from the indie level and go up. I think one of the biggest things that's driven this kind of rebirth of pro wrestling in the last decade or so is the resurgence of indie wrestling, because for quite a while in the US, you had the WWE, and that was it. And there wasn't really that avenue for people like yourself, people like a Nick Xander, people like Lights Camera Faction to aspire. Okay, hey, I'm going to go there. Or Chris Bay, the ultimate finesser. Now he's a member of the Bullet Club. He's the Impact Tag Team Champion and one half of your FSW Tag Champions.
Very
He
true.
wouldn't have had that option a decade ago. Now you have Impact's going, AEW's going, Ring of Honor's going, the NWA's back, New Japan Strong. I mean, there's so many options. You're seeing that growth come organically from the bottom up.
And I really love how many avenues there are now in the business. Like you just said, like you can go. Like I remember Cross, he went to Mexico and then he was with TNA for a little bit
Hmm.
before getting signed. New Japan's there. A few of our like Sandra Moon and the Citos have been to Canada. Like that's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean G Sharp too. So really having all these avenues, Ring of Honor is still a thing. Some
Uh
of
huh.
our guys get some opportunities on there. I'm sad AEW Dark isn't a thing no more, but they still, uh, I think they still bring in some indie guys, do they?
Yeah, they are, and they're bringing in quite a few indie wrestlers now for Ring of Honor because that's really basically taken over as their streaming platform. And more opportunity the better, because I think you're going to see MLW step up a little bit. Maybe you see the NWA step up a little bit. Where I'm recording from in Kansas City, they're using quite a few Kansas City wrestlers now in the National Wrestling Alliance. So I
Nice.
think you're seeing that moving back and forth. Well, and then bringing it back home to the Las Vegas area. Your next big event going to be part of Big Valley Wrestling, Once Upon a Time in the Valley. That's coming up on July 28th. What are you going to be doing there? Where will greatness shine in the Valley?
Well, Greatness is scheduled to wrestle in a 6-man tag, and I'm gonna keep the spoiler under wraps for now. But I will say this: for the first time ever, there are going to be 2 new disciples of Greatness.
Oh, okay. 2 students in the learning tree, huh?
Yes, and we are going to beat up Sky High, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Good enough. And that's coming up July 28th, Big Valley Wrestling, Once Upon a Time in the Valley. And it's going to be at the Sci-Fi Center.
The Sci-Fi Center open to all ages, and we have a pre-sale until Thursday. $10 pre-sale tickets till Thursday.
Excellent. In the combat sports capital of the world, you can go see some high-level pro wrestling for $10. That's not bad at all. Now, what else are you looking forward to here as we roll through the summer and kind of anywhere in the world of wrestling? What do you have your eyes set on?
I am going August 5th to Valor Pro, which is based in Victorville. So that'll be a fun little trip. And then I have a few FSW dates. And then that's it for now. The autumn season is still a little open now. But
well, I'm sure it'll start filling up. And as we roll into it here, let's get you the LVWS Championship belt. Go through the championship round. Just a few quick questions for you.
Let's do it.
You said that, the few wrestlers were big influences to you, The Rock, Chris Jericho, CM Punk. What about a current wrestler going? And it could be one of those guys. Who do you watch now that you say, hey, yeah, I like that?
If I had to pick one, when I first saw a promo of his before he was signed to AEW, I knew that he was going to be something, and that is Mr. MJF himself.
Sure. Okay.
Just his promos just really struck me. And even like what he's doing now, he's just on fire right now.
No, can't argue with that. Now, how about who would be your dream opponent?
Dream opponents of all time. Man, that's good. Maybe, you know what? I got more than one dream match. So let's do this.
Sure.
What I really want that I can see myself wrestling is I want either Funny Bone, Hammerstone, Wise Guy, any one of those vets. Because I feel like I haven't wrestled enough veterans in the biz.
Fair enough. And just wind it down here. One last one. What is your favorite move to execute? And then your favorite move to teach?
Favorite move to execute would be either my GDT, which is a spike DDT, or I just actually started doing this. It's called I did it in my match against Jeffrey Excellence, and it's basically I slam him, boom, I go up to the second, and I do a little dance, like a little crab walk,
a
forearm. So that has to be my second favorite, just because I pulled it out and it was kind of unexpected. My favorite. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, a little walking across the ropes.
My favorite move to teach would either be a good snap mirror and a good clothesline, because clotheslines are very not hard, but you have to do it a particular way because sometimes they stick them out too long or too small. But once they get that right, they find that pocket and it's like a thing of beauty.
Well, that's a good one, and it can be a finishing move, right? It can be a super easy move. Well, here, it's an easy move to do badly. It's a hard move to do well. But if you can do it well, it's your finishing move. I mean, there's been plenty of New Japan wrestlers. The clothesline is their move. So, yeah, that's a
Yes.
good one. I appreciate it. Well, Brandon, thanks for bringing a little bit of a touch of greatness to the LVWS Confidential studio this week.
No problem, Gerald. I had a great time.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you here in FSW and coming up July 28th, the next chance to get to see him at Big Valley Wrestling, Once Upon a Time in the Valley. Brandon G, hey, thanks a lot for joining us. And every Wednesday, there's a new LVWS Confidential. Subscribe on YouTube. And of course, go to the mothership, the website, Las Vegas Wrestling Scene, and you can find links to all the shows and all the news about the current events going on in Las Vegas for pro wrestling and even a little bit beyond there. Thanks again. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.